Welcome to the 18th season of the Nitwits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Our Nitwits panel includes Neil Riddell of the Altoona Mirror, Mark Brennan of FightOnState.com, Jacob Cowker of WTAJ Sports, and a special guest Nitwit each week. The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Reed and Salini, Doctors Reed and Salini provide orthodontics for children and adults. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona, just ask rental. Buy what you want, rent what you need. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. By Your Rehab Choice, Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday.
Well, for the first time in a month and a half, we are talking about a Penn State loss here on the Nitwits alongside Neil Riddell, Mark Brennan, Mike Irwin. I'm Jake Cowker. The Nittany Lions lose 38-10 to number 1 Ohio State. Penn State now 4-12 all time against top-ranked teams. And the Buckeyes expose some different deficiencies than maybe what we've seen so far to this point.
Yeah, I think they're going to show that. They're going to do that with a lot of teams. I mean, up to this point, they had not been playing, I don't think, exceptionally well. And Ohio State really put it all together offensively. No turnovers, didn't have a lot of offensive penalties. From Penn State's perspective, I thought overall they played well. I thought what really hurt them, though, they did not create any turnovers. When Ohio State carries the ball 50 times, you know with their explosive athletes, they are going to make big plays. They're going to score points. Last year at Beaver Stadium, turnovers really helped Penn State, including a pick six from Zettel. They were not able to force any of those turnovers, and defensively, I thought that's what hurt Penn State.
You know, the feel of this game, to me, it was one of the most competitive 38-10 games that you're ever going to see. But what surprised me about Penn State is Bob Shoop has done such a good job on defense and the defensive staff, and I just don't think, and I know Ohio State has perfected what they do, and they have, you know, to be able to put Braxton Miller in addition, I mean, they are just so good. But I thought Penn State would set the edge, contain that option. They needed to do that much better.
Yeah, I mean, they have so many good athletes on that team. I think it's hard to defend a team like that. I mean, I don't know how many they've won, 20 straight games or something like that. Number 1 in the country and probably number 1 preseason. They've been number 1 all year. So Penn State is playing the best team probably in the country right now. And I really think, I mean, like you're saying, Neil, I think we held in there and were respectable. I mean, we were within 2 scores with 6.5 minutes to go in the game. Then they gave up a lot of points at the end of the game when ended up like 38-10, but it was 21-10, and right at the end of the first and third quarter we won. We won 3-0. We were ahead 7-0 in the third quarter. So if you look at it that way, it was a positive for Penn State. But I don't think they're going to run up against another team like Ohio State.
Well, you know, one of the things that Carl Nassib said afterward is he thought Penn State didn't necessarily play its game defensively all the time. They weren't in attack mode, but, you know, in defense of Shoop, they didn't give up those gigantic plays that we saw Ohio State use in the playoffs last year to blow people out. I mean, they really, you know, it's hard to say you kept somebody in check when they rushed for however many yards they rushed for, but they didn't allow those big, gigantic plays. It was more grinding them down, and that's the other thing I would say in defense of the defense. You come out in the third quarter, offense scores, defense has back-to-back holds where they give the offense a chance to do something else, and there's no sense of complementary football with this team. So, yes, the defense had some deficiencies in this game, but the offense really struggled, and the special teams let them down yet again.
But you know, they played well against Cardell Jones, who's their best passer, and they were set for the passing. The running game, I think, with Barrett coming in there and Braxton Miller and Elliott and some of those guys. I don't think they expected that, you know.
Who's going to stop that?
I mean, they had to rush on for if they were in a passing situation, but in a running situation, they were having trouble picking people up.
Jones is easier to defend.
Obviously.
Yeah. And but I would disagree. In the second quarter, I mean, they were pretty much gashed, with the run game and in the fourth quarter. And I agree. I think their offense didn't do enough when they had some opportunities, but just generally, I would have expected they had to have a more competitive game defense.
My point would be is that they regrouped after a poor second quarter. No doubt a poor second quarter, and they gave the offense a chance to do some things. Second half, Ohio State owns a 5-minute time of possession advantage, and I put that as much on the offense and special teams as I do the defense.
Yeah, you saw the offense come out and put together a quick strike 3-play touchdown drive, but then after that, it just kind of got away from them.
One thing you don't think about, I mean, Penn State held them the first 3 times they had the ball. Then the 4th time they had the ball, I mean, I don't know if you watched the replay on TV, but the ball that Miller caught was actually fumbled and hit the ground. And if they don't make that play, we get the ball back, and you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, so that changed the whole complexion of that game. We held them 3 times, and we would have held them for the 4th time had that not gotten that call from the referees on the ball that bounced there. And then Giuseppe didn't help us any dropping that ball about the 20-yard line on that long.
That's been, and it's not the first time. I mean, you can't as a tight end, and it really hurt that they didn't have Kyle Carter in this game because they've gone to Giuseppe, and it's a shame. But, he's wide open. And these tight ends in these big games, when they're wide open, they absolutely have it, because if it's 10-0, then it's maybe a different complexion. You don't know how the defense responds.
Well, and that's the other point. I mean, you come out of the first quarter having not allowed a point, up 3-0. The way that Penn State played in that first quarter, you can't come out of that having blown those opportunities. And I know we can discuss the offensive deficiencies all we want, but I get it that this wasn't a great game for the defense, but I still think it was more about the offense and special teams.
Well, the punting is just beyond comprehension at this point.
And that's another place where you really see the difference between a team like Ohio State and Penn State. When Ohio State's constantly pinning the Nittany Lions inside the 10, inside the 5, and Penn State's punts go somewhere between 20 and 30 yards, it seems like.
Well, you wonder. I mean, they actually average about 38 yards a punt, but both of them, the Italian guy, Pasquarelli or whatever it is.
Australian, but
whatever it is, and Gula was the other guy, Gula. But both of them had these short punts to the outside there that gave us real bad field position.
The Italians could
let the German guy talk now.
All right, well, let's after this.
The Irishman at this point.
Let's maybe after that we need to maybe regroup and take a break here for all the bad from Penn State. The Nittany Lions trip to Columbus.
The Jewish guy wants to make a point.
Actually, he's Australian. He's an Australian, now I think about it.
All right, well, the wheels are off. The wheels were on, though, for Saquon Barkley. He picks up right where he left off. Our panel will weigh in on the true freshman's huge game under the lights when we return.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Reed and Solani, orthodontics for children and adults. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. Buy what you want, rent what you need.
I'm Gerald Hodges from Penn State Nittany Lions, and you're watching the Nitwits.
Well, thanks to one of the newest 49ers from bringing us back from break there. We're seeing a star emerging big time on this Penn State team. Other side of the ball, though, offense, true freshman Saquon Barkley, almost 200 yards on the ground again. What a way to return from his ankle injury.
Yeah, he's obviously, I mean, we've said it, he's a difference maker. Andrew Nelson after the game talked about how, again, really this is one of these kids who, if an offensive lineman makes a mistake, can help really cover up for it, and you're just seeing it. I mean, he is special. I'm not even sure who they've had in years that has been as good as this kid, but it just kind of, you think about a kid almost rushes for 200 yards and they still lose the game. Kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't think that's really ever happened where a kid rushed for this many yards. I would think that he's going to be now anointed as the starter. I think it's time. Down in the red zone, Lynch has been a good leader and a really good kid, But, he went out wide on the one play that got dumped, and you just can't afford, especially against a team like Ohio State, you have to put your cards on the table. And, these next 3 games are going to help determine their bowl status. I think that you're going to see even more from Barkley.
I think they look back. I mean, a guy named Kurt Warner comes up. I think he has a lot of similarities to a Kurt Warner, but I mean, he has so much potential now. I mean, going forward, we're going to have a lot of fun watching this kid play. I mean, he's got good size. He's like a 4.40, I think, and 194 yards without a real great offensive line. I mean, just think if they get a good offensive line in there, how this kid will start running.
Yeah, and the thing is, he might not have needed that hold. He might have been able to burst them. I mean, the replay sort of showed that he at least would have been down in the red zone. Not that would have helped them.
Yeah, one of the cool things is that's the second largest crowd in Ohio Stadium history, over 108,000. And you could get the sense that these people were impressed. I mean, there were some oohs and ahs as he was breaking these runs. And these people, whether you like Ohio State fans or not, they know their football, and they know really good football players. And I think there was a level of respect for this kid when he started popping off big runs.
Well, I think there's a lot of people on our team that are good athletes right now. I think we have more good athletes than we've had in a long time. Now, there's a few exceptions that we'll make. I don't want to pound on the offensive line anymore. But I think, defensive backs, defensive linemen, linebackers, receivers. I mean, a couple of those guys got to develop a little bit more, but now we have a running back that's a marquee running back. So I think there's a lot of positives for Penn State.
You mentioned receivers. Chris Godwin has really come on, and he was, how about that catch he made to start the second half? That really kind of gave them that energy. They quickly converted that into points. How about just how quickly they are able to do it? And again, it seems like even in these losses, there's just enough glimpse to make you wonder, could this be there more?
Yeah, and Godwin, he's become their best receiver so far this year, but he drew a pass interference penalty. So, that was also, throwing it down the field. I think Barkley, what he did yesterday is going to help their passing game here going forward, because they're going to be able to establish that with play action. Not that they did that a lot yesterday, but I think that going forward, that should be maybe one of the good things that will come out of this game.
Well, they need other receivers to step up now. I mean, Deshaun Hamilton made a terrific play on the touchdown, but otherwise, kind of where was he in the game? Saeed Blacknall, we've seen him, have one really good games. They have enough kids there that other guys should start picking it up. Jasicki, obviously, he's got the physical talent. He's just got to start hauling that ball in. So that's one of the other things, that you can't just rely on Godwin game in and game out. You have to have some of these other kids step up and Hackenberg start targeting him.
I think the key is the tight end, and they haven't really used the tight ends at all. Jasicki hasn't been catching the ball. But, it's an easier throw. If you think like Godwin, he's running the deep patterns and the out patterns. You don't have to throw it that far to complete it to a tight end. He's coming right across the middle. So I don't know what they're thinking about, why they're not using their tight ends. Now, I don't know if you know about Carter, what happened. Did he get hurt or something in practice? He wasn't there?
During the
week? I asked Franklin for specifics, and he kind of danced around
it.
To
talk about injuries. But, when they get in the red zone, I think part of the thing is, and this is their lack of identity of who they are, who they want to be, it doesn't seem like they have, O'Brien would drag the tight end. Even going back further, they threw the fade when they had Derek Moy. So, when they get to those spots, I'm not sure they have the plays that they are really, really comfortable with. He gunned the ball into Hamilton against BC with the game on the line. Tremendous play last year. But what do they like to do in the red zone that has really been effective for them?
Well, that's why I really thought we were going to see one of the kids, Irvin Charles, or the other kid, Juwan Johnson.
Yeah.
You look at these kids in practice, and they're both huge, and obviously they're not playing them for a reason. They've decided to go ahead and hold them out. But that's in that game against BC, Kyle Carter came up in the red zone as well. So I think that his issue with the tight end is you lose Jesse James. Kyle Carter sounds like he's been kind of bumped up most of the year. Jasicki can't hold on to the ball. And, another positive, they finally get Brenneman back on the field, so maybe he's able to start doing a few more things as the season goes along.
The other thing, Hackenberg hasn't really been effective in some of these short passes.
That's right.
Yeah. Some of the out passes he's throwing, and he seems like he's rattled back there. And I don't know, he's not getting rid of the ball quick enough, not making quick enough decisions. And then at the end of the game, they have him in there after they're down 38-10.
Yeah.
I mean, why don't they give McSorley the shot to come in there at least to see what he can do and give him a little bit of experience?
Hackenberg in there. Saquon Barkley was still in there when they're literally just running off 3 straight runs. Yeah, just one of those things where a lot to maybe question down the stretch.
Now, I will give Hackenberg credit here. I thought he played pretty courageously against a tough defense. Right. He was banged up. He's been injured at times. His back was twisted. So
no one's ever questioned his heart, ever. And anybody who has doesn't know what they're talking about.
All right. Well, watching Saturday's game, you still see that Penn State is behind a team like Ohio State, the nation's top team. When we return, we'll talk about just how close the Nittany Lions may be and what it would take for them to rejoin the Big Ten contenders.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Monarch Cleaners for all your cleaning needs. By your rehab choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life.
Now back to the Nitwits. A roundtable discussion of Penn State football.
Well, it's been quite some time since Penn State has truly been in the national title picture. Ohio State, meanwhile, they're showing that they might again be for real. What will it take for Penn State to get back among the talk of the contenders?
Well, if you look at it, Ohio State's had like 3 recruiting years have been outstanding. And this year, Rivals.com, I'm not sure that authenticates anything for sure, but they're number 1. Michigan's number 5 and Penn State's number 6 in recruiting. So Penn State's finally back into the recruiting area that I think they're going to get some top athletes coming in. I think they've already done that, but if you look at Penn State, there's a lot of younger people there. I mean, freshmen and sophomores, and I think we are going to get into the picture with the recruiting that we've been doing down there.
It boils down to the offensive line. I mean, that's it. They have players at all the other positions, all the other positions that can compete really, I think, with just about anybody. But that until they get that offensive line set, I just don't think they're going to be able to be a consistent contender. And then also, clearly, special teams. I mean, it's no secret that they went out and are getting, committing scholarships now that they have them to a kicker and a punter for next year. But to me, I mean, it all boils down to that offensive line. I mean, that really, when you look at what the difference in that game was, offensive line and special teams to me.
Yeah, but what about also quarterback development? I mean, next year you're going to be presumably going to be breaking in a new quarterback. So I think there's, and you look at, I think it's interesting with Michigan State in this division also, and what's going to happen with D'Antonio, and what an amazing finish that game was. Now you have Harbaugh. I just think that I like the fact that Penn State knows what they have to do. If they can be good enough, but it's a real uphill climb.
But it bodes well for the Big Ten because if you look at it, Michigan State's also in the top 10 recruiting. Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan State are all in the recruiting war out there and trying to get the best athletes there. So it's tough. I know they're competing with other, conferences, and I think they're doing a great job recruiting. But the conference is getting a lot tougher too, and they got those 3 of those teams in their division. If they're going to have to play every year.
Sometimes, though, you see that could end up being a long-term positive. You saw it in the SEC West where because you had the teams winning the national title, other people started putting in, and it just kind of becomes a cycle where if Michigan and Ohio State and Michigan State are going to be good, well, there's no way that this Penn State fan base will settle for just being mediocre.
Well, I mean, if you look what they've done recruiting-wise too, I mean, they're getting it done on the recruiting trail. There's absolutely no question about that. I mean, you hate to fall back on excuses, but they are still a very young team. And I don't know that anybody expected them, other than them maybe, to go out and beat this team this week. I don't think anybody really did. Don't think they were embarrassed. Even though they lost by a significant score, I don't think they were embarrassed. So there is a difference there, but I don't think it's a monumental difference that they're incapable of overcoming over the next couple of years, next few years, with continued solid recruiting and good coaching.
To put you on the spot, how close are they? Is it a matter
Well,
of
last year they lose to that team in double overtime. This year they lose. So it's probably somewhere in the middle. It's as Joe used to say, you're never as bad as you look when you get close in a game, and you're never as bad as you look when you get blown out. But I don't, I think if it's easy to say, but you have to develop a strong offensive line or you are not going to be a contender in the Big Ten.
And I think they have, like, next year, I think they have 4 offensive linemen coming in that they've recruited. And I don't know what their freshman situation is down there right now, but it takes a while for them to develop some of these. And then, I don't know, like, when I think of the offensive line coach, I think of Mike Munchak and what a job he's done for the Steelers. So they might look at getting a good offensive line coach in there.
Well, he's getting rid of Herb Hand.
Proposing staff changes.
All right.
Well, that's a possibility. It's always a possibility.
Wow.
All right, well, now it is my time to chime in and say time to move on. And when we come back, it will be our prediction time for Saturday's game in Baltimore against Maryland when we return.
The Nitwits are brought to you by EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday.
Penn State heading to Baltimore to play Maryland. We will start our predictions this week with the Nitwit of the Year frontrunner, Mr. Neil Riddell. Neil?
Thank you, Jacob. When you make a coaching change in midseason, you don't quite know how that's going to play, but you look around the country, you see what Miami Dolphins did, this week after having a week off. They blew out Tennessee. Spurrier resigns in South Carolina midseason. They have a decent performance the other day. USC played well against Notre Dame. And you're seeing a lot of turmoil in particularly college coaching. So I think Maryland, after a bye week, is going to play really hard. And I think this is a potential trap game for Penn State. I'm going to say Penn State 24, Maryland 21.
All right.
I want to make it real quick. I'm sorry to see Randy Edsall go, but I think Penn State's going to go down to M&T Stadium and beat Maryland 30-10.
30-10.
Yeah, for the key for Penn State, don't let Ohio State beat you twice. I actually liked that Penn State was very competitive in that game and didn't look like heads were hanging afterward, that sort of thing. So I think Penn State's going to be okay in this game. Come out, play pretty well, win it 27-17.
27-17. I do agree with Neil. I think that when you change coaches at this point, especially with that extra week to prepare, we haven't seen what Maryland will look like under Mike Locksley, and neither has any of Penn State's coaches, so that's really such a wild card. That being said, I think with the way that Maryland tried to force this rivalry last year, even though it's a different coaching staff, Penn State's got to remember that. I think Penn State, give me 27-21, Penn State with the victory. Before we wrap up, let's take a look at the Nitwit of the Year standings. And Neil, he's taking it to us, if we can get that up there. Well, if we can't, we'll just put
don't put it up.
Neil 4, the rest of us 1, except for the guests still looking to break through.
I'm rooting for you guys.
All right.
We're rooting against you.
We'll see you next week on the Nitwits.
He changed his score, too.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Reed and Salaney, Doctors Reed and Salaney provide orthodontics for children and adults. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. Buy what you want, rent what you need. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. By Your Rehab Choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday. You can also see the Nitwits on AltoonaMirror.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next week.